All right, so there you go. This is Firecrackers. Wherever you're watching from around the world, we are live from our headquarters here in Lagos, Nigeria. Very disturbing revelations there from Friday Sunny, a parent of one of those who was recently released, shared with us some very, very disturbing revelations. Let's see if we can get one or two reactions to some of the revelations he has made. I hate to put you on the spot, gentlemen, joining me live now, the chairman of NSE Ikeja branch, engineer Olutosin Ogumola, live from the mainland area of Lagos. He joins us live on the program tonight. And of course, joining us also virtually is the director online Tomorrow CIC in the UK, Manchester, Agbenga Folabi. He joins us live on the program. Let me begin with you, Engineer Tosin. I hate to put you on the spot, but can you just respond maybe in 60 seconds or less to some of these issues of insecurity as just disclosed to us by by the parent of one of those released?
Thank you very much, for having me on. And just like you had said, again, the issue of security impacts on every one of us. So it's something that indeed requires everyone to make, contributions. From what, the man said is quite disheartening, and you can imagine a man having had two of, his children in incarceration for upward of 60 days. So it's quite alarming. And the truth of the matter is that, we still are not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. The only thing I want to chip in at this point is it is important for government to understand the fact that issues of engaging security goes beyond military prowess or goes beyond just having to go on the form of attack that we have. It must be all-encompassing. And one thing you will want to now, get to know is how well has the government, done in terms of deploying, technology in actually approaching, some of these things. It was not too long ago that we had an unmanned area vehicle challenge somewhere in Kaduna. So how well has the government done to bring in every stakeholder? We cannot have these people roaming around where you can actually have drones to track and monitor. We are talking about actually having to link our, phone numbers, to the NIN and the like. So how well are we doing to deploy technology, in fighting insecurity? So these are some of the perspectives I really want to bring, to the table regarding this. At the end of the day, it is only a safe and secure nation that can make progress. There is nothing if we put in every other effort and it is not a safe place, then it defeats, every other endeavor that is actually being undertaken. So security is key, and the government must actually be ready. Again, the truth of the matter, from what the man has said, we now also consider the issue of the sincerity of purpose. Sincerity of purpose. So it actually involves a whole lot. But the fact remains that we have a nation to run, we have a nation to build. And, the government has to take the lead. And they must now be able to bring in every stakeholder. We cannot afford to have a government that is helpless and cannot secure its own citizens. That is the fundamental responsibility of the government, and that is enshrined in the Constitution of the Federal Republic. So the government must, rise up to its responsibility, must actually take the lead, and it's important for it to ensure that, it approaches it in an all-encompassing manner. And, you cannot be doing the same thing, something the same way, and be expecting, a different result. So it's important that the government actually understands the importance of nipping the issue of insecurity in the bud.
Engineer Tosin, let's
all the stakeholders.
Well said. Well said. Let's stay with you and stray away from security for a moment as we look at Nigeria's infrastructures and 2021 engineering outlook. You're an engineer, and we look at a country such as China, a country that has made progress in the past 20 years, rapid and drastic progress in the past 20 years. How come Nigeria isn't even close?
Okay, that's that's a very big question. And that will take me, back memory lane, and I keep referring people to it. Back in 1950, there was a projection that was made. Back in 1950, they were projecting 50 years ahead, and they were looking at countries then that had the capacity to become, world powers by year 2000. And when I stumbled on that report, on that list, Nigeria was actually ahead of Japan on that list of, countries that have the potential. But again, the question is to all of us, is okay, how did we now miss it? I mean, we must be able to now track, okay, from then, 1950 through 1961, we got independence, and then we began as an independent nation. How have we not been able to actually bid on it? And as a matter of fact, it is simply because we have not been able to fashion out a national vision for development. This is at the heart of it all. I could remember back, after the civil wars in 1970, and we had, head of states, General Gowon, and we had the finance minister, Chief Obafemi Awolowo. They came up with a national development plan, of revival, reintegration, and the likes. But along the line, when we saw, succession of governments, and we started to have the disconnection. And then the issue of our value system, now also comes in. So we just derailed, because we lost focus. At the end of the day, everything stops. The box stops at the table of leadership. And of course, when we talk about leadership, we have political leadership is key. So we have not been able to make good progress, because we've not had the quality of political leadership that can galvanize the nation towards a common goal of national development that will now bring every other person on board. And of course, that is where the issue of infrastructure, issue of running the production economy will now come to the table. So that is basically why we have not been able to move ahead, is that we have not had an inspiring political leadership that is able to actually fashion, a vision for national development that will become, that will become consistent, even when we have different governments coming, on board.
Talk to us from your perspective on the role that engineers can play in this issue of nation building.
All right. Again, just like we had said, what we have on the screen, infrastructure is one key area, that engineers can come in. And the truth of the matter is that infrastructure is the soul of national development. You ask anybody what differentiates the developed nations from the developing or underdeveloped is how much of infrastructure, the infrastructure stock, is the infrastructure stock that actually separates the developed nations and the developing or the underdeveloped, as you may want to say it. So now if we must get ahead, just like in your introduction, I heard you saying the infrastructure deficit for Nigeria is, up to the tune of $3 trillion. $3 trillion. So, and as a matter of fact, if you don't have such an infrastructure stock, you cannot talk of industrial development, which makes you a production economy and guarantees, gainful employment. So it is interwoven, it is interconnected. So now the role, that engineers, well, you cannot talk of infrastructure and not talk of engineering. Of course, we have infrastructure across, different spheres. Like we were talking about security the other time, we can't talk of security infrastructure. We can talk of healthcare infrastructure, which is one area that, the COVID-19 pandemic exposed many nations. We were only lucky in this part, for whatever reasons, that, we were not impacted as Europe or the America, was impacted. That will have really shown the deficit that we have in our healthcare infrastructure. But when we're not talking about built infrastructure, then you are talking particularly now, to advance national development and make us, a production economy that can actually feed itself and actually, have its people, getting employed. Then you will be focusing basically maybe on transportation and on power. And now the role of the engineer is to ensure that indeed it is important for the nation to ensure that the engineers are the center of these plans for infrastructural development. Why? Again, when you look at the attempts we are making currently, at infrastructural development, and you will wonder, we are building power plants. I was once at the Zungeru power plant. It is the Chinese that is building that place for us. We are building roads, and you have the Germans building our roads, the major roads for us. We are building rail network now, and we have the Chinese, and you will imagine we have been studying engineering for the past 60 years. Why? It is part of our propensity, for what is foreign, whereas we have local capacity. So what is important, is for the nation to now look inwards. As a matter of fact, you will want to consider the entire spectrum of engineering, and you will take it from conceptualization through design, engineering, procurement, and construction, then operation and maintenance. After we will find a situation whereby we only play in operating and maintaining these spheres, these assets. And at the end of the day, you even find out that spare parts that are required, we are still depending. So we continue to keep those people in their jobs. We continue to impact unfavorably on our foreign exchange. So we must begin to look inwards. And where that will come in, let me give a clear example. And again, you cannot take it away from the government that indeed, at the end of the day, it is not that we don't know what we have to do. Only recently, a few months back, the Central Bank of Nigeria spearheaded a framework to actually create an infrastructure corporation, Infracorp, and they are working with African Finance Corporation. Pardon?
Tosin, because we are absolutely pressed for time, and we have to round off this conversation with you very, very, very briefly now.
Yes, just in a minute. Just in 1 minute, I would want to say,
yes,
the same way. Right. Let me just wrap up my thoughts on this. The same way they have been able to mobilize finance for infrastructure, there are two parts to it: the financial, commercial, and the technical. We must by now also be pulling, the engineering resources together to drive whatever infrastructure plan we have. Because at the end of the day, we will pull all those monies together. If we don't have a clear cut, as a matter of fact, as a nation, we don't even have a national engineering development plan. So it is important for government to pull the engineering institute. Talk of COREN, that's the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. Talk of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. We must bring these resources together to start putting in place a clear-cut national engineering and infrastructure development plan, which whatever money AFC and CBN put together will now back up. That is indeed the way to go for us to make an headway in infrastructural development.
Indeed, there's so much to talk about as regards to Nigeria's infrastructure and the engineering sector as well. There's the aspect of the railway, which we intend to speak with you on some other editions of the program. But I'm just a bit curious, in terms of the profiling of engineers in the country at the moment, it was a thing of pride some years ago for someone to be referred to as an engineer. And I wonder what is playing out exactly with the profiling of engineers. What you want to shed some light on that, please? Very briefly, please.
All right, thank you very much. Just like I said, it is still connected, to those ways we actually got derailed. We have situations now that because we go to sign contracts, for example, with Chinese government, before you know it, they bring in their own technicians here, whereas we have capable engineers. And we also, as engineers, we look inwards, right? To say, okay, we cannot continue to play the blame game. We must actually bring ourselves up for visibility. And that is one of the things we've been working on. Only last week at the Nigerian Society of Engineers Ikeja branch, we launched what we call Engineering Resources Portal. That is Engineering Resources Portal, for the Nigerian Society of Engineers. It is an avenue for whatever project you want, for you to be able to, locate qualified engineering personnel. Only a few days ago, too, we launched, a cooperative society at the level of the Nigerian Society of Engineers Ikeja branch. Why? We want to open up opportunity for engineers to actually, have access to funds. So one of the things that have impacted is that we have refused to actually patronize, indigenous engineers. We made a progress with Nigerian content development in the oil and gas, but it is for us to now ensure it cuts across all sectors of the economy. We have qualified engineers. And that is why from our home end, we said, okay, if we can support ourselves to make good projection of our capabilities. And that was why we went ahead with that ERP, the Engineering Resource Portal, on the site, on the website of the Nigerian Society of Engineers branch. So it is all about believing in ourselves. We cannot be having projects, having contracts being given out, and then we will only be looking at foreign patronage. It is important that, government of the country at all levels, even particularly at the state levels, we find, for example, in Lagos State, contracts being handled, by non-Nigerian engineers, whereas we have capacity. It is not because of the capacity. It is not because of, any other thing, but it is simply a case of our propensity. Largely, I always tell people, it seems we have not been able to win ourselves from, the mental colonialism, as it were. But the truth of the matter is that the Nigerian engineer is well prepared, well certified to undertake all of this. And it continues to be a profession of pride, even till tomorrow. At the end of the day, just like I pointed out at a point in time, when China was going to get ahead, it took them to have 18 engineers on the federal cabinet. No nation will go anywhere without empowering engineering and engineers. And that is the message that the Nigerian government at all levels must actually come to terms with.
NSC Ikeja branch, Engineer Tosin Ogumola, thank you so much for speaking with Galaxy TV tonight.
Thank you very much for giving me the platform. Most sincerely appreciate.
All right, so there you go, Engineer Tosin Ogumola. He's the chairman NSC Ikeja branch, speaking to us live on issues surrounding Nigeria's infrastructure plan, on outlook for 2021, and of course the role of engineers in nation building.